Today let's talk about most disturbing GTA characters. Donald Love, GTA's very own Donald Trump, at least in appearance. First appearing in GTA 3, Love presents himself as a charismatic media mogul and real estate tycoon. His polished exterior and business success paint him as just another wealthy entrepreneur. However, as players progress through his missions, disturbing layers of his personality begin to emerge. What makes Love such a compelling character is how the games gradually reveal his true nature. He maintains a sophisticated public image while harboring some of the darkest tendencies in the series. His obsession with power extends beyond mere business success into truly disturbing territory, particularly regarding his unique dietary preferences that are hinted at throughout the games. The writing team crafted Love as a reflection of unchecked corporate greed and media manipulation. His missions often involve creating artificial crises to profit from property devaluation, showing how he views human suffering as simply another business opportunity. This commentary on disaster capitalism becomes more relevant with each passing year. Love's character arc takes some truly dark turns, especially in Liberty City stories, where we learn more about his relationship with his mentor, Avery Carrington. The game strongly implies that Love's corruption of Carrington's business teachings led him down an increasingly unstable path. By GTA 3's timeline, he's fully embraced his most disturbing tendencies while maintaining his facade of respectability. What's particularly chilling about Love is how he never drops his polite, aristocratic demeanor, even while orchestrating horrific schemes. His refined manner of speaking and expensive suits serve as a thin veneer over his true nature. This contrast makes him one of the most memorable antagonists in the series. Next, Eddie Lowe appears in Grand Theft Auto 4. While the series has featured many criminals, Eddie stands apart as one of its most genuinely disturbing characters. Eddie first appears as a random encounter for Nico during the night hours in Alderney. At first glance, he comes across as just another eccentric Liberty City resident, engaging in what seems like awkward but harmless conversation. However, these initial interactions hint at something far more sinister beneath the surface. What makes Eddie particularly unsettling is his attempts at appearing normal. His dialogue is filled with failed attempts at social connection, revealing someone trying to mimic regular human interaction, but not quite getting it right. The voice acting deserves special credit here. The way Eddie's tone shifts between forced friendliness and barely contained aggression creates a constant sense of unease. Through his conversations with Nico, we learn about Eddie's troubled past and his severe insomnia. He speaks about his activities with an uncomfortable casualness, mixing mundane details about his life with subtle hints about his darker activities. The writing team did an excellent job of making these conversations feel authentically uncomfortable, without being gratuitous. The game never explicitly shows Eddie's crimes, instead relying on newspaper reports and his own disturbing dialogue to paint a picture of his activities. This subtle approach actually makes him more unsettling than if the game had shown everything directly. The newspapers in Liberty City report on a serial killer targeting vulnerable citizens, adding another layer to Eddie's character. In his final appearance, Eddie finally drops his attempted facade of normalcy, revealing his true nature to Nico. The encounter serves as a dark reflection of the game's themes about the American dream and immigration. While Nico came to Liberty City seeking a better life, Eddie represents the hidden dangers lurking in seemingly ordinary places. What makes Eddie such a memorable character is how he differs from the typical GTA antagonist. He's not a mob boss or corrupt official. He's someone you might pass on the street without a second thought. This grounding in reality makes him far more unsettling than more outlandish villains. Ursula. Players first meet Ursula on a stretch of highway near the Chiliad Mountain State Wilderness, where she appears as a stranded hitchhiker. At first glance, she seems like a quirky, but relatively normal young woman, asking for a ride home. This initial encounter plays into common GTA stranger mission expectations. But it's just the beginning of a gradually unsettling character arc. The drive to Ursula's house gives players the first hints that something isn't quite right. Her dialogue during this trip walks a fine line between socially awkward and concerning, with subtle references to her family situation that become more meaningful later. The writing team did an excellent job of making her seem just off kilter, enough to create unease without immediately revealing too much. Ursula's remote house, nestled in an isolated corner of the map, serves as the perfect backdrop for her character. The location itself tells part of her story. Far from civilization, surrounded by wilderness, with a lighthouse that plays an important role in her background. The environmental storytelling here adds layers to her character without needing explicit exposition. What makes Ursula particularly interesting is how the game gradually reveals her nature through subsequent encounters. If players choose to maintain contact with her, they discover increasingly concerning aspects of her personality. Her attachment style becomes notably intense, with behavior that goes well beyond typical relationship dynamics. Her backstory, while never fully explained, contains hints about troubling events at the lighthouse where she lives. The game leaves much to player interpretation, which actually makes her character more effective. Sometimes what's left unsaid can be more impactful than explicit revelation. What's particularly effective about Ursula's character is how she subverts the typical GTA stranger mission format. While many random encounters in the game are played for laughs or action, her storyline maintains an underlying current of unease that builds with each interaction. The voice acting deserves special mention here. The performance walks a delicate line, making Ursula sound simultaneously vulnerable and threatening, adding significant depth to her character. Her tone shifts throughout conversations in subtle ways that might not register on first playthrough, but become more noticeable as players understand her true nature. A character that was too disturbing for GTA. Darkel. Darkel was originally envisioned as a key supporting character in GTA 3's narrative, serving as an antagonist with ties to the main protagonist, Claude. However, as the development team delved deeper into fleshing out his role, they made the decision to remove him from the final game entirely. What made Darkel such a concerning presence was the sheer depth of his disturbing nature. Unlike many of the unsavory characters that populate the GTA world, Darkel existed on an entirely different level of darkness and instability. The writing team seemed to intentionally craft him as a figure that went beyond the typical bounds of even this famously morally gray series. Accounts from the development team suggest that Darkel's backstory and motivations were steeped in genuine psychological horror. He was conceived as a former mental patient with a history of violent episodes, obsessed with using Claude as a pawn to further his own twisted agenda. The mere glimpses of his character that have surfaced over the years paint a picture of someone whose deranged mindset made him utterly unhinged. One particularly chilling detail about Darkel is how he was intended to task the player with carrying out acts of terrorism and mass destruction. This included missions where Claude would have been forced to bomb civilian targets and cause widespread panic and suffering throughout Liberty City. What's most unsettling is how Darkel seemed to represent a darker reflection of the player's own agency within the game world. Rather than simply being a standard villain to be overcome, he was envisioned as a character who would actively try to corrupt and manipulate the protagonist, and by extension, the player controlling them. This blurring of the line between player and character was seen as a step too far. Ultimately, the decision to remove Darkel from GTA 3 speaks volumes about the development team's commitment to maintaining a certain line when it comes to player experience. Josh Bernstein. On the surface, he presents himself as a successful real estate developer, with a penchant for exotic cars and high-end clientele. However, as Michael delves deeper into Bernstein's world, a far more disturbing side of the man begins to emerge. What makes Bernstein such a chilling figure is the juxtaposition between his outward demeanor and the disturbing reality that lies beneath. He speaks with a calm, almost soothing tone, yet his words and actions betray a mind that has clearly strayed into the realms of true psychopathy. The writing and voice acting here deserve particular praise, as they strike a delicate balance between unsettling and compelling. Bernstein's backstory, as revealed through the narrative, paints a picture of a man whose descent into madness was likely rooted in a traumatic upbringing. However, the game is careful not to offer this as an excuse for his increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. Instead, it serves to contextualize the depths of his instability without diminishing the severity of his actions. One of the most disturbing aspects of Bernstein's character is his total lack of empathy or remorse. He views the world and the people in it as mere commodities to be exploited for his own twisted ends. This sociopathic worldview manifests in the twisted games he forces Michael to participate in, where the stakes involve not just financial ruin, but genuine human suffering. It's crazy how Bernstein maintains an air of control and composure, even as he orchestrates these increasingly horrific scenarios. His calm demeanor and calculated approach make him all the more unsettling, as it becomes clear that he derives a twisted sense of satisfaction from manipulating and terrorizing those around him. The game's choice to not delve too deeply into the specifics of Bernstein's mental state, or the full extent of his activities, is also a shrewd one. The ambiguity surrounding his character and the true nature of his crimes allows the player's imagination to fill in the blanks, making him all the more disturbing as a result. Next, Harlingford. Harlingford first appears as a seemingly innocuous client for Niko Bellic. On the surface, he presents himself as a wealthy businessman eager to hire Niko for a job. However, as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that Harlingford is hiding a far more sinister agenda. What makes Harlingford such a haunting figure is the gradual unveiling of his deeply disturbed and abusive nature. The game masterfully peels back the layers of his outward persona, revealing a man consumed by jealousy, control, and a complete disregard for the well-being of those around him. Harlingford's first task for Niko is to follow his wife Marnie and report on her activities. This seemingly innocuous request quickly takes a dark turn, as Niko witnesses Harlingford physically and emotionally abusing Marnie. The player is left with the unsettling realization that Harlingford's motivations stem from a twisted desire to maintain absolute power and dominance over his spouse. The situation only deteriorates further when Harlingford later asks Niko to eliminate Marnie, citing her infidelity as justification. What's particularly disturbing about Harlingford is how he maintains a veneer of respectability and authority throughout his interactions with Niko. His refined manner of speech and outward appearance of wealth and success only amplify the horror of his true nature. The juxtaposition between his polished facade and the monstrosity within makes him all the more unsettling to confront. The game's writers deserve praise for their restraint in not sensationalizing Harlingford's abusive behavior. While the details are certainly disturbing, the focus remains on the psychological impact of his actions, rather than gratuitous violence or shock value. This was truly crazy. We are done. If you think there were other characters I could have added, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe, and thanks for watching.